Six Flags Great America is an amusement park located in Gurnee, Illinois, about an hour north of Chicago. It was the largest American amusement park I had not been to before visiting for the first time last month. I had really high hopes going in because I had heard excellent things about Great America, many saying it was one of the best Six Flags parks. And after visiting, I absolutely agree. With an impressive 15 roller coasters and one of the most diverse lineups in the country, I found this park to be one of the absolute hardest to rank. While I think I have my top 5 pretty set in stone, spots 6 to 11 are all very close in quality, and for that reason I wouldn't get too upset by those rankings if you disagree with them. Depending on the day, I could very much see myself flipping their rankings, and I'm sure the next time I visit Great America, some of these rides could exceed my expectations, allowing them to climb higher on my list, or maybe vice versa. But for now, this top 15 is one that I feel quite confident in, so I look forward to sharing it with you guys. This is every roller coaster at Six Flags Great America ranked from worst to best, and starting at the number 15 spot is Sprocket Rockets. The park's smallest roller coaster, Sprocket Rockets is by no means a bad ride. This common Vekoma Jr. coaster stands 28 feet tall and travels at speeds of up to 21.5 miles per hour. Obviously, it's a very tame ride, but I think it's important for a park like this to have options that cater to children and families. Therefore, I don't really have any criticisms to give Sprocket Rockets. It just isn't exactly what I'm looking for as a thrill seeker. Number 14, Little Dipper. This is a coaster that the park really didn't need to have, but I'm so glad they do. Little Dipper is a family wooden coaster that opened here a lot more recently than many of you would probably think. It was added to Six Flags Great America in 2010, but it actually dates all the way back to 1950 at a park called Kiddieland, which was another amusement park that operated in the Chicago area. When Kiddieland closed in 2009, they had an auction to see if any other property would be interested in relocating the classic coaster. Six Flags Great America ended up being the highest bidder at, get this, $33,000 US. Of course, this didn't include any of the costs involved in its relocation, but it was still a bargain for the park, which now gets to claim a super cool wooden coaster for the younger crowd. Number 13, Dark Knight Coaster. One of 3 of this ride built across the Six Flags chain, the others located at Six Flags Great Adventure and Six Flags Mexico. This would be my second time experiencing one of these since the Mexico iteration was closed when I went to that park. This is the familiar Mock Rides Wild Mouse layout without any big drops or anything like that. But what's so cool about this particular Wild Mouse is Six Flags gave it a go to theme it. Now, of course you can't expect anything Disney or Universal level, but for what they managed to achieve, they certainly improved the overall ride experience. I think the coaster could be due for an update since a lot of the theming feels outdated, but it's nonetheless impressive that Six Flags didn't just put it outside and call it a day. I think the ride is better off for being an indoor roller coaster. Number 12, Demon. Along with Wizard, Demon is the oldest operating roller coaster at the park if you exclude Little Dipper, of course. Six Flags Great America only opened in 1976 and Demon opened with the park. Unfortunately, when I visited Great America, this was the one coaster that was closed. However, since I've ridden the nearly identical Demon at Sister Park California's Great America, I felt that I was qualified to rank it in this video. From my experience on that coaster, Demon is actually a pretty good old school coaster. It's obviously not going to be the smoothest and the layout isn't going to be particularly unique, but it's got some intense vertical loops and some pretty decent theming. That is, if I'm assuming they themed their Demon like the one at California's Great America. Interestingly, this is the only roller coaster each of the Great Americas share, so I was glad that this was the one ride closed during my visit. If I had to choose which of the park's coasters I'd miss out on that wasn't a kiddie coaster, I'd probably choose this one anyways. Number 11, Wizard. I'll be honest, I feel so bad putting Wizard this low because I love this ride. I really admire its unique elements and old school charisma, but at the end of the day, it's objectively the 11th best coaster here in my opinion. Like a few of this park's roller coasters, Wizard has a very neat history. It opened in 1976 and is one of 2 Schwarzkopf Speed Racer coasters left in the world. I know California's Great America used to have one of these too, but they unfortunately got rid of theirs. Now, in 2002, the ride was nearly closed forever due to increasing maintenance costs and to make way for the park's newest edition, Superman Ultimate Flight. However, due to public backlash and outcry, the park reversed their decision at the last minute, instead demolishing their Aerodynamics Mega Looper Shockwave, putting Superman on its plot of land instead. So shout out to the locals who saved this ride because it's absolutely a special coaster. The cars on Wizard resemble bobsleds where you sit in a single file seating position. Then you climb up a 70-foot tall electric spiral lift hill, one of the last remaining in the world. The main portion of the layout isn't anything too intense, but it's just a pure fun experience flying around the park and whizzing past trees, pun intended. I think it's a phenomenal family coaster, and I'm personally grateful that Six Flags Great America continues to preserve such a rare ride experience. Number 10, Joker. In the last decade, SNS Worldwide mass-produced the 4D free spin coaster for almost every single Six Flags park. Since I've now been to almost all of them, I've gotten sick of having to wait in line for the same old ride that I'm used to. However, the one here at Six Flags Great America really caught me by surprise. I won't pretend like it's a drastically superior ride because it's not, but the amount of flips you get is random every time, and I think I went upside down 5 whole times on Joker. Granted, 2 of those 5 points of inverting weren't full rotations and instead were the vehicle just hanging me upside down for a bit. it. But the 3 that did rotate 360 degrees were fantastic. Though it's a super short experience, I understand why Six Flags would want to clone these so many times because they are intense and exhilarating coasters. Number 9, Flash Vertical Velocity. Intamin impulse coasters are super rare these days, and we've started to see more removed than added. Before China's legendary Twin Dragon opened in 2021, the last new one installed at a park was Steel Venom at Valley Fair in 2003. That one also remains the only impulse coaster with the original holding brake that each of these open with. Unfortunately, every park that had an impulse coaster with the exception of Valley Fair saw more benefit in saving money that would be spent on maintaining the holding brake than upkeeping such a rare feature. It's something that I feel is missing from this ride experience, but I don't blame them for running the coaster as is since the general public don't know better anyways. I still think the ride's launches are absolutely fantastic and the spikes provide some intense whip and weightlessness. I think it's cool how one of the spikes is twisted and the other is vertical, as it really adds some variety to the ride. Flash Vertical Velocity is one of the many rare coaster models at this park, which I'm glad has remained here after all these years. Number 8, American Eagle. Arguably the park's most iconic roller coaster, American Eagle is a massive wooden roller coaster that was built in 1981. It was meant to race, as you see with the 2 tracks located side by side, but unfortunately the park no longer runs these at once and simply operates a different side each season. That said, the coaster itself remains at the park even after years of rumors that this thing might be on the chopping block. Between Whizzer, Flash, Demon, and this, it's pretty admirable that Six Flags Great America would rather keep all their classic and unique coaster offerings around rather than remove them. American Eagle still runs quite smooth after all these years, and it provides some pretty great airtime moments. If there is a downside, that helix in the middle of the coaster is very elongated and does literally nothing to improve the ride. But I find it pretty funny that something like that was built in the first place, so I embrace it for what it is. I do think in the future an upgrade of some kind would benefit the coaster though. There's no way it's sticking around for that much longer in its current form, and frankly, I don't think that should be seen as much of a loss. As much as I enjoyed this ride, Great America has 3 other wooden coasters, each covering a different thrill level. So I think RMCing this ride, giving it Titan track, or doing some other massive renovation is the best thing for it moving forward. Number 7, Viper. Another very interesting ride at this park, Viper is the only roller coaster Six Flags built themselves. I'm not sure what the thought process was there, nor to add this coaster in the first place since they already had American Eagle, but who cares since Viper is a surprisingly kick-ass ride. I think when most of us hear that Six Flags built a wooden coaster, we think it's going to be some rough piece of crap. But it actually turned out to be the opposite, as Viper is a very well taken care of ride. The coaster's layout is a mirror image of the original Coney Island Cyclone, which many parks tried to replicate back in the day. And while none of these can compare to the original, which I think is one of the best classic coasters operating in the world, Viper is still a very fun coaster. I didn't find it so rough, and it's got plenty of airtime moments. The turnarounds are all pretty forgettable as expected, but the rest of the layout is great. So I think Viper is definitely one of the park's underdog coasters. Not one you'd expect to be so good, but it's actually towards the top of the roller coaster collection. Number 6, Superman Ultimate Flight. Bolliger and Mabillard debuted their first flying coaster in America with Superman at Six Flags Over Georgia, which opened in 2002. The concept of soaring around the park in a prone position was one that was pretty foreign at the time, so Six Flags decided to capitalize on it. The ride turned out to be such a success that they'd clone it 2 other times, first at Six Flags Great Adventure and then at Six Flags Great America. Though it sits on flat land, making it less interesting than its southern counterpart, it's still got the familiar highlights like the inline twist at the end and especially the pretzel loop. The ride's signature element by far, the pretzel loop dives headfirst and takes riders upside down and on their backs. It's a super crazy moment on an otherwise graceful ride, but in my opinion it works. Superman is a fan favorite for sure, and it's understandable as to why. Number 5, Batman the Ride. Another coaster that Six Flags loved to clone were these B&M inverted coasters called Batman the Ride. But this particular installation was special, as it was the original inverted coaster opening in 1992. This would be the first time a coaster would seat riders beneath the track and take them upside down at the same time. For such an ambitious concept, it's amazing that B&M nailed it so hard on the first go. You can see why Batman clones are now at almost each of the Six Flags parks, because these things are awesome. After several decades, they remain super smooth, super intense, and super whippy. If you're in that back row, well, let's just say you're in for one hell of a ride. If there is a downside, the Batman clones are very short, but I don't consider it that much of a flaw because there literally is not a dull moment. And I'd much rather have a short coaster be awesome the whole way through than a long coaster that doesn't do much. Batman the Ride is a fantastic coaster, and even though it's such a common ride, I always look forward to experiencing it. Number 4, X-Flight. The only B&M wing coaster Six Flags ever installed, X-Flight is a super fun ride. I mention this all the time now, but wing coasters are guilty pleasures of mine. Every single one that I've experienced has been great, and X-Flight is no exception. Though I say that, X-Flight does happen to be my least favorite of the wing coasters I've ridden, and there's 2 reasons for that. First, revolving around the restraints that lock tight on your chest, and the second having to do with the ride being pretty shaky for a B&M. It's weird when you have a much older B&M like Batman and it's glossy smooth, but then X-Flight, which opened in 2012, is quite bouncy. Nonetheless, there is a lot to love about this coaster, starting with the layout. It's not the most innovative for a wing coaster, but it's got a lot of great elements like the initial wing over drop, 2 0G rolls, and my personal favorite, the inline twist through the control towers. This has got to be the most terrifying near miss I've experienced on one of these. If you're on an outside seat, you feel like you've got to duck or you'll hit something. Normally, Six Flags is the kind of chain that likes to cheap out on things like this, so it's amazing they devoted a little extra cash into these control towers. It's a spectacular moment on a very enjoyable ride, one that I definitely prioritize when visiting Six Flags Great America. Number 3, Raging Bull. B&M's hypercoaster model has been one of the most successful roller coaster types of all time. The original Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg opened in 1999 and honestly never really impressed me. But later that year came the second B&M Hyper, Raging Bull, which I once again expected to be towards the bottom compared to its sister rides around the world. Much to my amazement, a back row ride on Raging Bull is absolutely spectacular. The first drop is my favorite on any B&M Hyper, with a crazy tug into a 208-foot tall drop filled with airtime. Each of the coaster's camelbacks have similarly great airtime moments as well. Another reason I didn't have super high hopes going into Raging Bull is because it's got a weird twister layout. I thought the lack of airtime hills compared to other B&M Hypers would take away from the experience, and the bank turns would be pretty meh. But I think this coaster is one that's more about quality than quantity, as each of the hills it does have are very good. I'd say I was right about the turns though, which is why I still prefer many B&M Hypers, but Raging Bull is a coaster that nonetheless exceeded expectations. It was very close to the number 2 spot, but since I prefer a more fast-paced and relentless ride experience, I decided to give it to Maxx Force. The park's newest roller coaster, opening in 2019, I'm surprised Six Flags Great America went for a ride like Maxx Force. As you could imagine, I'm glad they did, especially because they really needed a new launch coaster, but the ride's an S&S Air launch model, which is notoriously unreliable. As expected, it suffers from a ton of downtime, but I was lucky in that it never broke down for me for reasons not associated with weather. Now, Maxx Force is well known for one thing and one thing only, and that's the launch. Using compressed air to blast riders from 0 to 78 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds, Maxx Force easily has one of the most forceful launches currently operating in the world. Unlike other launches, this one just feels like you're being teleported across the track, and that's a crazy feeling. After that, Maxx Force has a handful of inversions, including the fastest inversion in America. But before you can think straight, the ride's over, and that's really the biggest downside with Maxx Force. Usually, a short length doesn't bother me as long as the ride is great the whole way through, but this one takes short to a whole new level. I wish Six Flags was able to budget in 1 or 2 more elements to round out the ride experience, and if they had, perhaps this could have been the best roller coaster in the park. But I still wouldn't be so sure because the park's top coaster really surprised me, and that of course is Goliath. Now, Goliath has had a reputation amongst coaster enthusiasts for being one of Rocky Mountain Construction's weakest roller coasters since it opened. And while I'd maybe agree, it's a whole heck of a lot better than I expected. The thing about Goliath is it is a very short coaster, and as a matter of fact, it has one of the lowest quantities of elements of all the RMCs. But here's the redeeming factor, and that's that each of this ride's elements are amazing. The first drop in the back row is great, the airtime hill is very powerful, and the dive loop and 0G stall are possibly my favorite inversions on any wooden coaster. I also enjoy the 2 sets of overbank turns that give weird pops of lateral airtime going in and out of them. There really isn't a dull part of this experience, and I think a lot of that can be credited by the ride size. Because it is a pretty large RMC at 165 feet tall and a drop of 180 feet tall, it takes all of its elements with great speed. That is, unless it's going intentionally slow like those 2 inversions, which benefit from the hang time they provide. I know usually I'm not the biggest fan of hang time, but I found these instances quite comfortable and really fun. So overall, Goliath is a surprisingly fair standout coaster for the park and rounds out a wonderful lineup of 15 Scream Machines. If you ever get the chance to visit Six Flags Great America, I'd highly recommend because it's got a lot of variety in its coaster offerings. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash for more content like this in the future. Also, leave me a comment letting me know what your favorite coasters at Great America are. Until next time, I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.